In 2024, I read through 100 books. So, here are my top 24. How we're gonna get through this quick. The first 14 are going to be runners-up. I know that's a lot of runner-ups, but I want to talk about 10 of my all-time favorite books right now, in depth. There will be no spoilers in this video. This is just going to be my pitch for you to read these books in 2025, because all these books need to be read at least once in your life. I mean, that's my opinion. So, let's get started with our 14 runner-ups. We Hunt the Flame. It's very Aladdin-esque, a great little fantasy. The Grandest Games, a continuation of the Inheritance game series, but this book is so good. Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. It's about video game programmers, but it's so much more than that, you just have to read it. Ender's Game. They train literal children for war. Better than the movies, a cutesy rom-com. The Housemaid, a book that will keep you on your toes the entire time. 9 Perfect Strangers. A wonderful mystery, almost literary fiction book about a bunch of people trying to find themselves with, some creepy stuff going on in the background. Shadow and Bone. Magic, fantasy, the chosen one? Read it. Powerless. It's so tropey, it feels like you already know the story, but you don't. I love it. Legendborn. A modern King Arthur retelling. Such Charming Liars by one of my favorite authors, Karen McManus. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. A perfect YA mystery book. Booklovers. My favorite Emily Henry book. It's so cute. Mistborn. It should honestly be in my top 10. I just want to talk about some other books more than this one. It's a wonderful, wonderful fantasy, though. Now to get into my top 10. Which is crazy because in the last 7 years, I'm pretty sure I didn't even read 10 books a year. You know, when you move to a new city and you don't know anybody, this is what happens. What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. In this book, you're following our main character Inez as she goes across the entire ocean to go to Egypt to figure out what actually happened to her parents. Because she just got a letter saying they did, that had a magical artifact in it for her. And when she's wearing this magical artifact, she'll see some very interesting things sometimes. So she has some questions. So she goes over to Egypt to find her Tio Ricardo so she can figure out why and how her parents were supposedly murdered. This book is so full of life and adventure and fun, practical magic all the way through. It feels like Indiana Jones with a little more magic in it. And the plot twists she throws into this duology are absolutely insane. And it's a must-read duology. It is so good. This is marketed as a YA book. It does get a little spicy in one area in the second book, but it's easy enough to skip, and the rest of it is very, very YA friendly. It's just a wonderful Egyptian adventure. Number 9, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. Of what I'm aware, this is his first adventure into an adult sci-fi novel, and this thing is huge. It is almost 900 pages long, but every page is so worth it. In this book, Earth has been colonizing planets for about 300 years or so, and we're following our main girl Kira as she is on one of the teams that will go out to the planet beforehand to make sure it is safe for humans to colonize. On one of their last days on the planet, Kira is sent out to investigate something that came up slightly weird on the readings, but nothing too abnormal. But when she gets there, it's proof of alien life. This then sends us into a full-on alien space war, or Star Wars, if you want to call it. There are wonderful space battles in here, beautiful quotes. It's a wonderful look on how grief can affect us, but how you still have to move on from that and continue with your life. So if you need an alien space adventure that is probably going to make you cry, written by the guy who wrote Aragon, well, this is your book for 2025. And I mean, it's pretty long, so you may want to get started now if you're a slow reader, okay? The Book of Doors. This is a modern NYC magical realism book, and oh my word, I read it recently, but it is one of my favorites, and I'm so glad I did read it. Cassie, our main character in here, is randomly left this book called The Book of Doors, which leads her into this whole world of other magical books where people are trying to use them or just collect them or protect them from the people who want to use them from bad things. We have our mysterious big bad in here that came out of nowhere and is just doing absolutely anything to get these books and is one of the more terrifying villains I have ever read about because you're also in her mindset every once in a while. It gets so dark. This book starts off and it feels like kind of a cozy modern fantasy, and then it quickly becomes so gritty, dark, and serious, but in such a wonderful way. I have a theme this year, apparently, because this book also deals with the topic of grief beautifully. Beautifully. There are so many beautiful lines in this book. This is one of the more poetic male authors I have ever read. It feels a lot like Ashley Poston with The 7-Year Slip, which we'll talk about a little later. His writing is just beautiful and lyrical and I had to highlight so many things. Like this line, just describing sadness in such a wonderful way. But her sadness was stubborn, a constant bass note rumbling in the background of her thoughts. You know, I never thought about it that way, but that is the perfect way to describe it. So if you're looking for a more literary fiction, darker fantasy book, this is probably the book just for you. Also be ready for many, many POVs, but I promise it all makes sense. It's not too confusing. He does such a good job at differentiating the different POVs. As soon as you start reading them, you know what POV you're in because they all think differently, and he's wonderful at writing that. A Man Called Uva. Can you tell I've had to deal with grief a lot in the past few years? Oh gosh. I didn't even connect how many of these books heavily dealt with grief until I started talking about them just now, so promise I'm doing okay. These books just get to me on an emotional level right now, clearly. This book does make me want to cry just thinking about it though, so maybe I'm not emotionally okay anymore. This book is coming in at number 7 because it's such a beautifully tragic look into how the world can seem to forget about us as we grow older. And how just being friendly to somebody can make the biggest difference in their life. This book does deal with some very heavy topics, so look up some trigger warnings before you start reading it if you are triggered by anything. I don't want to say too much more about this book because it's something I just want everybody to be able to experience, and I know from the amount of Goodreads ratings this already has touched so many lives. This book has convinced me to forever want to read Friedrich Bachmann books because if an author can rip my soul out of my body, crush it, and then sew it back together, put it back in, and make me a whole new person by reading a book, then hell yeah, I'm gonna read their other books. It's just so beautiful, and it's so special. I love this book so much. Go read this. All right, so big tone shift coming in, let me warn you right now, but coming in at number 6, we have Fourth Wing. Before you pass judgment on me, I like dragons a lot. And also, this is the first book I read this year, which means this is the book that got me back into reading altogether. So it had to be in the top 10 somewhere. We're lucky it's not higher than 6, okay? But seriously, besides dragons, the fun romance, the high intensity all throughout this book is a love letter to all of us who deal with chronic illness day to day. Violet represents so many people that day to day have to work doubly as hard as anybody else just to get the same result. Because our bodies have been failing us for years. And then our two love interests in this book are the good and bad ways people try to help us. You have one that is just trying to protect her and coddle her for all of her life and telling her that she will never be good enough. She will never be healthy enough. She will never be able to do this. And then you have the other one that says, okay, you're gonna have to work harder. Let's go. And then you just watch this wonderful support group come around her. They all truly love her and just want to be there to help with anything they can. And then to top it all off, because Violet is our main character, obviously she becomes one of the coolest characters in this entire book. So yes, I will happily put this in my top 10 because even though it can feel like it's written for the CW, it has had such an amazing impact on reading in general, has pulled so many people back into reading, but has also been one of the few times I have felt truly connected to a main character and represented by a main character. Also, who doesn't want to read about a cool war college where they're allowed to murder each other and they get dragons that can talk to them? I would love to know who doesn't want to read about that. Let me bring the book back one more time, and if you're worried about spice scenes and that's the only reason you aren't reading it, check the link in my description for the Cleaned Up Romance collection. I've written a couple of spice guides for them before, but there are already Fourth Wing ones on there written by other amazing ladies that want to help people skip spice in fun books. So now you don't even have that excuse, so what are you gonna do? Okay, I don't know why I'm getting argumentative with you. I'm sorry. You don't have to read this book, but you should. It's a lot of fun. Not gonna lie, I took a break to eat some food real fast. Coming in at number 5, we've got Tress of the Emerald Sea. If you want a book that makes you feel like you're specifically watching The Princess Bride, this is your book. It's set in the world where the ocean isn't actually an ocean, it's just a bunch of spores, so it's kind of like a desert, but they use the science stuff to make it into an ocean where boats can go across. But the thing is If any water touches these spores at all, we're talking like a little bit of sweat or anything, they grow into giant vines. So crossing the sea is very, very treacherous. That's probably not a thing. And so we get to follow Tress, who is this small island girl, take on the seas to rescue the love of her life who has been captured by an evil sorceress. This book is so strong on the comedy, but so good and heartfelt as well. This is a true cozy fantasy with a little bit of extra action. It almost feels like you're reading a cartoon, if that makes sense, or this is a weird reference, but it feels like you're reading a script for the play that goes wrong. I don't know if anybody will get that. That's the kind of vibe and humor it has. Things just go wrong. We're getting told this by a narrator who is absolutely insane during the events of this book. It's so good. You just have to read it. This is a wonderful book by Brandon Sanderson. He originally just wrote this for his wife. Can you imagine having a whole book written for you and it's this masterpiece? Anyways, it's so cute. I love that he fully published it and that she wanted him to. So sweet. Definitely deserving of a top 5 spot. Number 4, The 7-Year Slip. This is the only contemporary romance in my list, but it is fully deserving of this placement. Guess what? It's got magical realism and it's set in a modern day NYC. I have a pattern. I like magical realism a whole lot, okay? You're following the love story in this book, but the thing is, the only time they can be together is when she is in her apartment and the apartment decides to transport her 7 years into the past. Get it? The 7-Year Slip. It is such a sweet, heartfelt book. It also deals with grief. Again, I swear I'm okay, but maybe I'm not. I don't know if this is just a me thing this year or if lots of books have grief at the center of it. But again, this is beautifully done. Watching her work through grief, watching her fall in love with somebody 7 years in the past. It's so cute. Also, Ashley Poston is one of my favorite writers. This is my favorite example of how her writing is constantly. I settled into the dry bathtub and dampened my watercolors, waking them up from their slumber. Waking up the watercolor from their slumber. I love people who are good with words because I'm so not. Project Hail Mary. Honestly, these last 3 books are all good enough to be in the number 1 spot, but number 1 just has something special. But Project Hail Mary, number 3. In this book, we're following our main character who wakes up in a spaceship not even knowing their name, not remembering how they got there, and they are years away from Earth, in the middle of space, all by themselves, with 2 dead bodies on the other mattresses, so pretty chill way to wake up, don't you think? This book has humor, it has heart, it has so many good things going for it. It's also going to be made into a full movie releasing in 2026, so get on the train early, go ahead, read this book. I know it's so popular, but it's popular for a reason, and it's so well deserving of a top 3 spot. This is a good time to mention, I haven't even read The Martian yet. I should probably do that. But this book's humor is unmatched, and I've heard the audiobook is absolutely fantastic, but I haven't personally listened to it, so I can't put my stamp of approval, because that means a whole lot on the audiobook. But I can put my stamp of approval on this book, because so good. Humor's top-notch. I was cracking up reading this. It's another book where sadly I can't get into much of the plot because basically all of the plot besides he's in space is a spoiler. So go check it out. Coming in at number 2, we have none other than Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Oh! Now I have read a lot of books with beautiful writing this year, and I have read a lot of books with beautiful lyrical writing that you can just tell are trying too hard to be beautiful and lyrical. But this book is perfect. It's right on the dot with the writing. It's lyrical, it's beautiful, it's almost musical in how you read it. That's what lyrical means, Natalie. Stupid. I'm not lyrical and musical. I just like to read things that are. This book is kind of set in a 1920s inspired time. We're following 2 up-and-coming journalists who are competing for the one story spot left open at this newspaper place. Anyways, it's all fine, dandy, kind of cozy vibes until one of them decides to be a war correspondent because, you know, there's a war going on in the background that is waged by 2 gods. So, super chill. But truly, in this first book, especially in this duology, you are focusing on mostly the love story between our two main characters. It's dual POV. It is everything you want in a book. Kid and Iris, some of my favorite characters ever. I love them so much. The best love story I've read all year. It is now time for our top book of 2024. If you have watched any of my videos before, you probably know what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say, for the number one book of the year, for everybody, not just me, no. My number one book of the year is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Are we all applauding? I hear the applause. This whole 6-book series is nothing but amazing. In this book, you're following Darrow. He lives in a world where golds are at the very top of society. There's a bunch of other colors in between, and then you have reds at the very bottom. And Darrow is a red, hence the name Red Rising. Once his whole life has completely fallen apart, the rebellion takes him in and basically says to this 16-year-old kid, you're gonna be the leader, you're gonna be the face of the rebellion, and our plan is, we're gonna put you in this top gold school. You only have to be the very best there to secure a high government or military job after you graduate. One thing though, they don't know anything about this school, and the school turns out to kind of be like the Hunger Games. They throw all these rich kids in an arena and they say, don't die. To be clear though, it's not a death match. The actual goal is to be the last house standing and to have all the other houses under your control. But people do still die at the school quite a bit, and they say they try to prevent that, but I don't think they do at all. This book is dark, it's brutal, it's gritty. It will make you sob like a little baby. Because let me tell you, it will rip your heart out, rip it in two, throw it on the ground, and stomp on it multiple times. And it won't even say it's sorry. I have never screamed at a book like I screamed at some of the books in this series. I have never been so attached to characters that are completely fictional and are made up by someone else. They're not even made up by me, and I love them. This story is just something so special, and it's getting talked about more and more in the booktube space, but it deserves to be as big as some of the giants in this space, and I just hope maybe one day I can see that come to fruition, because it's a work of art. This book will change your life, I can guarantee that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my list of my top 10 books of 2024. And 14 runner-ups, so in total 24 books. So in total 24 books. 2024 has been an absolutely fantastic reading year, and I cannot wait to come back next year and share my top 10 of 2025, because I am sure I am about to find some absolutely amazing books. Let me know your top 10 if you have them, or if you want to, just let me know your top 3. I am so curious, and I always need new book recommendations. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help me out a lot, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye, y'all.